The waiting room smelled like fear. 6 people sat in cold metal chairs outside Min-joon's office, and every single one of them was shaking. One man kept fixing his tie. A woman whispered prayers under her breath. Another person dropped their phone twice. Because everyone in Seoul knew one thing. Kang Min-joon did not like nervous people. He was 29 years old and already the CEO of Technova, one of the biggest tech companies in Korea. He was smart, fast, and serious. His face never smiled in meetings. His eyes never missed anything. And in the last 6 months, he had fired 20 assistants. 20! Some left crying, some left shaking. One man actually ran out of the building and never came back for his jacket. So when the door opened and a young woman walked in carrying a small book, everyone looked up. She was different. She didn't look around the room nervously. She didn't check her phone 100 times. She just found a chair, sat down, crossed her legs, opened her book, and started reading. Her name badge said Joy Adaze Obi, age 24, Nigeria. One of the other candidates leaned over and whispered, "You know who this interview is for, right? Min-joon, the guy who makes people cry?" Joy looked up from her book, smiled softly, and said, "Mm-hmm." Then she went back to reading. The man stared at her like she had lost her mind. Then it happened. A loud beep came from the front desk, then another. Then the receptionist gasped, "The system is down! All the computers! Everything just crashed!" The whole office started shaking with panic. People ran in circles. Someone called IT. Someone else called their manager. The receptionist picked up her phone and put it down 3 times without dialing anyone. Joy closed her book slowly. She stood up, walked to the front desk, and looked at the screen. Her eyes moved fast, reading error codes, checking connections, pressing a few keys. She asked the receptionist one calm question. "Did anyone update the server software last night?" The receptionist blinked. Yes, I think so." Joy nodded. "That's the problem." She opened the back panel of the main computer, unplugged one small cable, waited 3 seconds, and plugged it back in. All of the screens came back on. The whole office went silent. From behind his glass wall, Min-joon stood with his coffee cup halfway to his lips. He had watched everything: the calm walk, the quiet thinking, the steady hands. No panic, no performance, just a girl who saw a problem and solved it. He set his coffee down. His assistant knocked on his glass door and asked, "Sir, should we still begin the interviews?" Min-joon didn't even look away from Joy, who had returned to her chair and opened her book again. "No," he said quietly. "Bring me the girl with the book." Joy got the job. She started the very next Monday. Her desk was right outside Min-joon's office, close enough that she could hear when he was about to lose his temper, which happened a lot. Min-joon moved fast. He talked fast. He thought fast. When something went wrong, his whole body tensed up like a spring about to snap. Joy moved slowly. She talked softly. She thought deeply. When something went wrong, she got very, very quiet. And that's when she was actually working the hardest. They were the most opposite 2 people in the whole building. The other workers didn't know what to think of Joy at first. Some of them didn't speak to her. Not because they were mean, they just didn't understand her. She didn't gossip, she didn't laugh loudly at lunch. She sat in the corner of the break room, eating her food, watching people, listening. "She's strange," one worker named Park Soo-bin whispered to her friend. "Or maybe she's just quiet," her friend whispered back. On Joy's 3rd day, Min-joon stormed out of a meeting with fire in his eyes. A supplier had delivered the wrong parts for their new product launch. It was a disaster. He was ready to call the supplier and say things he would regret. He reached his desk and stopped. There was a blue folder waiting for him. He opened it. Inside was a list, 3 other suppliers who could deliver the right parts by tomorrow with their prices, their contact details, and a small note in the bottom in neat handwriting. The third option is the best. They've worked with Technova before. Joy. Min-joon stood there holding the folder. He looked through his glass wall at Joy, who was typing quietly, not even glancing up. He didn't say thank you that day. He wasn't used to saying it. But something shifted inside him. Small and quiet, like a window opening. Slowly, things changed. They started eating lunch at the same table. Not because they planned it, it just happened. One day, Joy had brought food from home, a big container of jollof rice with fried plantain. The smell drifted across the break room and Min-joon's head turned. "What is that?" he asked. "Jollof rice, Nigerian jollof rice," she said. "Have you eaten?" He hadn't. She pushed a small portion toward him. He took one bite and his eyes went wide. "This is really good," he said, sounding almost confused, like he hadn't expected to like it. Joy smiled. "My mother's recipe." The next day, he brought bulgogi, thin slices of sweet grilled beef wrapped in lettuce. Joy took a careful bite, chewed slowly, and then her eyes lit up. "Okay, this is dangerous. I might eat all of it." Min-joon almost smiled. Almost. And just like that, with rice and beef and 2 very different people, something beautiful began to grow. It started with a mistake. Min-joon had a phone call with a client from Lagos, Nigeria. The client said something at the end of the call, a warm phrase in Igbo, and Min-joon had no idea what it meant. He nodded and said yes, and hoped for the best. When he hung up, he walked out to Joy's desk and said, in his flat, serious voice, "What does dalu mean?" Joy looked up. "It means thank you in Igbo. Did someone say it to you?" Min-joon nodded stiffly. "The Lagos client." "He was being kind. He likes you." Min-joon was quiet for a second. Then, unexpectedly, he pulled a chair to the side of Joy's desk and sat down. "Teach me more." Joy blinked. "Right now?" "Yes." She had to press her lips together to stop from smiling. "Okay. Repeat after me." "Numb." Min-joon said it. Badly. Joy covered her mouth with her hand. "What does it mean?" he asked, suspicious. "It means my father. We use it as a term of respect." "Try again." "Numb." He tried again. Still bad, but better. Joy laughed for real this time, a soft, warm sound that made 2 people nearby turn their heads. Min-joon looked at her. Something warm moved through his chest. He ignored it. "Now you," Joy said, "teach me Korean." He thought for a moment. "Okay. Gwen-chan ha. It means it's okay or are you okay? We use it a lot." Joy repeated it carefully. Her pronunciation was surprisingly good, and Min-joon's eyebrows went up a little. "Good," he said. And the way he said it, quietly, genuinely, made Joy sit up a little straighter. After that, their lunch breaks became language lessons. Min-joon brought small Korean phrase cards. Joy wrote Igbo words on sticky notes. They stuck them around Joy's desk, yellow sticky notes with words like "감사합니다," which means thank you in Korean, and "ndewo," hello in Igbo. The other workers watched this curiously. Something was happening between those 2, something nobody could name yet. One afternoon, Joy told Min-joon about growing up in Enugu, Nigeria, the red roads, the loud market days, her mother singing in the kitchen. Min-joon listened the way he never listened in meetings, completely still, eyes soft. "Your life sounds very alive," he said. Joy looked at him. "What was yours like?" He was quiet for a long time. Then, "Quiet. My parents were always working. I was alone a lot. I learned to move fast so I wouldn't have to sit with the silence. Joy understood something then. The rushing, the coldness, the impossible standards. It wasn't who Min-joon was, it was armor. She didn't say that out loud, but she filed it gently inside her heart, the way she filed everything, carefully and in exactly the right place. Not everyone was happy about how close Joy and Min-joon had become. Park Soo-bin had worked at Technova for 3 years. She was smart, polished, and had once believed that Min-joon would eventually notice her. She wore perfect outfits. She brought him expensive coffee. She laughed at the right moments. Min-joon never noticed. But he noticed Joy, the quiet Nigerian girl who didn't even try. Soo-bin started small. She accidentally forgot to pass along Joy's messages. She told new employees that Joy didn't really understand how things worked here. Once, she moved an important file off Joy's desk right before a big meeting. Joy arrived at the meeting, looked at Min-joon, and said, calmly, "I'll need 2 minutes." She went back to her desk, rebuilt the presentation notes from memory, and returned before anyone had even settled in their seats. Min-joon watched her walk back in. He didn't say anything, but after the meeting, he called Soo-bin into his office. Nobody heard what he said, but Soo-bin walked out with her face very still and her hands very stiff, and she didn't look at Joy's desk for the rest of the week. There was also Director Han, a heavy man with a loud voice who ran the international partnerships team. He had spent years trying to impress foreign clients with big words and louder handshakes. He did not like that a 24-year-old assistant from Nigeria was making him look slow. "Who gave the new girl access to client files?" he demanded one morning, loud enough for half the floor to hear. Joy looked up from her desk. "Mr. Min-joon did. Would you like me to show you which ones?" Director Han's face went red. I'm not asking you." "Then who are you asking?" she said, politely, without blinking. The room went very quiet. Even Min-joon, who was walking past, stopped. Director Han looked around. Nobody came to his rescue. He straightened his jacket and walked away. Someone at the back desk whispered, "She didn't even raise her voice." That evening, as Joy was packing her bag to leave, Min-joon appeared at her desk. He didn't sit this time. He just stood there. "Are you okay?" he asked. Gwenchanaha, the word she had taught him. Joy smiled. "Always." He nodded slowly. "I know what they say about you, that you don't belong here." Joy looked at him steadily. "People said that in school, too, and at my first job, and the one before that." She picked up her bag. "But here I am." Min-joon stood very still as she walked to the elevator. He realized something right then, standing in the empty office with the city lights blinking behind him. Nobody he had ever met was as strong as she was, and he was running out of reasons not to show it. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning at 8:47 a.m. Min-joon read it once. Then he read it again. Then he put his phone face down on his desk and stared at the wall. Choi Industries, Technova's biggest client, the deal that had taken 2 years to build, was canceling everything. Their CEO, Mr. Choi, had received a proposal from a rival company the night before. Cheaper prices, newer design. He was pulling out by Friday. Min-joon called an emergency meeting. Every director, every manager, every senior team lead packed into the glass boardroom. The air felt heavy. People looked at each other the way people do when a ship is sinking. Director Han stood up first. "We offer them a discount," he said. 20% off the full package. "That will destroy our profit margin for the quarter," said another director. "Then 30%. We can't." Voices piled on top of each other, everyone talking, nobody listening. Min-joon sat at the head of the table with his hands flat on the desk, very still, watching the chaos. And then he noticed something. Joy was not in the room. She wasn't supposed to. She was just an assistant. Assistants didn't come to boardroom meetings with directors and senior leads. She would be at her desk outside, probably hearing everything through the glass walls. Min-joon stood up. "Give me 10 minutes." He walked out. Joy was at her desk, and she was not just sitting. She had 3 screens open: client reports, competitor research, product timelines. Her notebook was full of tiny, neat writing. "You already know," Min-joon said. "I heard," Joy said. "I've been thinking." "About what?" Joy looked up at him. "Mr. Choi actually doesn't want a cheaper deal. His company is preparing for an expansion in West Africa next year. His new partner can't help him there." She turned her notebook toward Min-joon. Min-joon read her notes. His eyes moved fast. "You figured this out since this morning?" "Since yesterday," Joy said. "I saw the West Africa expansion news in a trade newsletter. I thought we should prepare. I just didn't know it would matter this soon." Min-joon looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "Come into the boardroom." Joy blinked. "I'm an assistant." "You're the only person in this building with a real answer," he said. "Come." The directors looked up when Joy walked in behind Min-joon. Director Han opened his mouth. Min-joon said, "She speaks." And Joy, quiet, steady, unshakable Joy, stood at the front of the boardroom, opened her notebook, and in a clear, calm voice showed 15 very experienced people exactly how to save the most important deal in the company's history. Nobody interrupted her. Not even once. Mr. Choi did not cancel. The meeting with him happened on Thursday. Joy had written the full proposal by Wednesday evening, working past midnight while the rest of the office had gone home. Min-joon stayed too, not because he had to, but because he didn't want her to be alone in the building. They didn't talk much that night. He made her a cup of Korean barley tea. She thanked him in Igbo, dalu. He smiled. A real one. Small, but real. On Thursday, Joy sat in the back of the meeting room while Min-joon presented. But it was Joy's words, Joy's research, Joy's strategy. And when Mr. Choi asked a sharp question that nobody had expected, Min-joon turned and looked at Joy. She nodded once. He repeated her answer. Mr. Choi signed the new contract that same afternoon. When they returned to the office, the entire floor had heard. People stood up from their desks. Someone started clapping. The applause spread, slow at first, then louder, until the whole open office was clapping for Joy, who walked in quietly and looked genuinely surprised. Director Han stood stiff as a board. He did not clap. But then Min-joon, beside Joy, began clapping too, steady and deliberate, and Director Han, one beat too late, raised his thick hands and joined in. That evening, Min-joon called Joy into his office. He had never done that for anything good, only for problems, corrections, urgent things. Joy sat across from him with her notebook in her lap, ready for instructions. He put a folder on the desk. He said, "Open it." She did. It was a new contract, senior strategy consultant, a salary that made her breath catch. She said, "This isn't an assistant job." "No," Min-joon said, "because you are not an assistant." Joy looked at the paper for a long time. "You made this last night when I was writing." "I was doing something useful too." She looked up at him. There was something in his face she had never seen before. open, careful, almost nervous. Min-joon was never nervous. She asked quietly, "Why?" He was quiet for a moment. "Because people spend years not being seen, and you've spent your whole life not being seen. That stops now." He tapped the folder. "Take the job." Joy pressed her lips together. Her eyes were bright, not with sadness, but with something full. The kind of feeling you get when something you carried alone for a very long time is finally gently put down. She picked up the pen. She signed. And outside the glass walls, Soo Bin watched, and for the first time she felt something different. Not jealousy, something quieter. She thought, so that's what it looks like when someone actually deserves it. Everything changed after the promotion. And nothing did. Joy still came in early. She still kept her desk neat. She still knew Min-joon's schedule before he did. But now she sat in senior meetings. She flew to Lagos for a client visit. She brought back chin-chin and zobo and made the entire Seoul office try Nigerian snacks during a Friday team meeting. Min-joon ate 4 pieces of chin-chin and pretended he didn't want a 5th. Joy saw him take the 5th. She said nothing. She just smiled at her notes. But something was different between them now. Something quiet and electric, like the air before rain. They both felt it. Neither said it out loud. Then came the company dinner. It was a celebration. The Choi contract, the new quarter, the West Africa expansion plan, everyone dressed up. The restaurant was on the 42nd floor, all glass walls and city lights. Joy wore a deep green dress. When Min-joon saw her walk in, he stopped talking mid-sentence. The person next to him had to say his name twice. They ended up beside each other at the long table, which had not been planned. They talked all through dinner, not about work for once, about books, about their families, about things that scared them. Joy told him about the night she left Nigeria, flying to Korea alone, not knowing anyone, holding her suitcase and pretending to be braver than she was. Min-joon was quiet. Then he said, "I sat in my father's empty house the night he passed away and wrote a 5-year business plan because I didn't know what else to do with the silence." Joy looked at him. "That was the saddest thing I've ever heard," she said. "I know," he said. "And also," she said gently, "the most Min-joon thing I've ever heard." He laughed, loud and sudden, a real laugh, not a small one. Several people at the table looked over, surprised. Min-joon did not laugh like that. Joy looked a little surprised, too. They stepped out to the glass balcony after dinner. The city spread out below them like a blanket of lights. The wind was cool. Min-joon said, quietly, "I don't know how to do this." Joy turned to look at him. "Do what?" she asked. He looked out at the city, not at her. "I feel things slowly. I've always moved fast. I didn't know how to stay." Joy said nothing for a moment. Then, softly, "I know. I've watched you." He turned to her. "And?" She tilted her head. "And I think you're learning." They stood there in the city lights, not holding hands, not kissing, just standing side by side, close enough that their arms almost touched, and for once, Min-joon, who was never still, did not move. He stayed. Min-joon planned everything. And then he threw the plan away. He had written a speech, 3 paragraphs. He had practiced it in his apartment mirror. He had chosen a restaurant, quiet, no cameras, no pressure. But when Sunday came, he drove to the market instead. He called Joy. "Are you home?" "Yes." "Why?" "I'm coming over. Do you have a kitchen?" A pause. Yes. Why do you—" "Good. I'm bringing things." He showed up at her apartment door with bags. Korean ingredients: sesame oil, gochujang paste, thin beef slices, spring onions. He stood there in his casual clothes, which Joy had almost never seen, holding groceries. Joy stared at him. "What is happening right now?" "You taught me jollof rice," he said. "I'm going to teach you bulgogi, and then we're going to eat, and I need to tell you something." Joy stepped back and let him in. They cooked together. Her kitchen was small and warm and smelt like her, like cocoa butter and pepper and something sweet. She stood at one side of the stove, making jollof rice from scratch, singing quietly under her breath in Igbo. Min-joon stood at the other side, carefully grilling the beef, glancing at her every few minutes. He burned the first batch because he was looking at her too long. Joy didn't tease him about it. She just passed him fresh pieces without a word. He said, "Gamsamida," "Thank you," quietly. She smiled. When they sat down to eat, both plates in front of them, jollof rice and bulgogi, side by side, two worlds on one table, Min-joon put down his chopsticks. "I'm not good at this," he said. Joy tilted her head. "I move too fast. I don't know how to say soft things. I spent most of my life thinking that being useful was the same as being present." He looked at her. "You showed me it isn't." Joy was very still. "You made me slow down. Not because you told me to, just because being around you felt like a waste." He pushed the bulgogi toward her plate. "I'm in love with you, Joy. I've been figuring that out for months, and I don't want to figure it out anymore." The room was very quiet. Then Joy picked up a piece of bulgogi with her fork and ate it slowly. Then she picked up a spoon of jollof rice and set it on his plate. "You know, in my culture, sharing food means something." "I know," he said. "I looked it up." Joy laughed, full and warm and real. "You looked it up." "I wanted to do it right." She looked at him across the small table. This man who had once made 20 people cry, now sitting in her tiny kitchen with burned beef and a racing heart. "You did," she said softly. "You did it right." And just like that, with jollof rice and bulgogi, with Igbo and Korean words stuck on yellow notes, with two people who were nothing alike and everything the other needed, love found a way. It always does. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to see it today. And hit subscribe.